Most people think they know what a wolf is. Something dangerous, but distant. The howl at the edge of a story, not a real threat standing in front of you. That image is wrong. The wolf you picture is a curated version, the one from documentaries, howling at the moon from a safe distance. The real wolf doesn't howl for the camera. It tracks, it coordinates, and once the pack decides you're prey, there's very little you can do about it. Here's what they don't tell you. A wolf's bite force runs around 400 pounds per square inch. A human bite at full clench barely reaches 150. That's not a stronger jaw. That's teeth built to crack a femur in a single clamp. You are not winning that fight. And a wolf doesn't hunt alone. It runs in a coordinated pack, communicating, splitting up, closing in from multiple directions at once. And together, they bring down animals 10 times their own size. For 100 years, wildlife experts said the same thing about wolves. A healthy wild wolf has never killed a person in North America, not once. It was true for 100 years. In 2005, it stopped being true. We'll get to that. This is Canis lupus, the gray wolf. An adult male can weigh up to 145 pounds and run 35 to 40 miles an hour in short bursts. It travels in a pack, usually 6 to 8 animals, sometimes more, and the pack is what makes it dangerous. A single wolf is a strong, fast predator. A pack is a coordinated hunting unit that takes down moose and bison, animals that outweigh every wolf involved combined. That coordination isn't casual. A wolf pack defends a territory that can span anywhere from 50 to over 1,000 square miles, depending on how scarce prey is. Within that territory, individual wolves take on different roles during a hunt. Some circle wide to cut off an escape route. Others drive prey directly toward the ambush. Howling itself isn't just noise. It's long-range coordination, a way for separated pack members to reassemble, warn off rival packs, and announce a territorial boundary that can carry for miles across open terrain. Researchers who've tracked wolf packs with GPS collars have documented individual members splitting off from the group for hours at a time during a hunt, then rejoining at a precise location, timed almost like a coordinated ambush rather than a chase. It's a level of cooperative planning that most predators simply don't need, because most predators aren't regularly trying to take down prey many times their own body weight. Wolves once lived across nearly all of North America. By the mid-1900s, hunting and habitat loss had wiped them out of almost the entire continental United States. For decades, the only wolves most Americans ever saw were in Alaska or in a handful of remote Canadian provinces. That absence is part of why the reassuring sentence held up so long. You cannot be attacked by an animal that isn't there. That's changing. Wolves have been reintroduced to Yellowstone, to Colorado, to parts of the Pacific Northwest. Populations that were nearly erased are recovering, and recovering populations expand into new territory. More wolves, in more places, closer to more people, than at any point in the last 100 years. That expansion is happening in real time. Colorado began releasing wolves west of the Continental Divide in December 2023, after voters narrowly approved reintroduction. By the 2025 to 26 reporting period, state biologists had identified at least 32 wolves in the state, organized into established packs, with pups being born and raised on Colorado ground for the first time in generations. Confirmed wolf attacks on livestock in the state passed 50 within the first 2 years of the program, despite range riders logging 15,000 miles on horseback trying to keep wolves and cattle apart. One wildlife official overseeing the program summarized it plainly. Conflict minimization can reduce the risk, but it doesn't prevent it. This is what wolf recovery actually looks like on the ground. Not a single dramatic reintroduction event, but a slow, ongoing renegotiation between an expanding predator population and the communities now sharing land with it for the first time in a century. The reintroduction itself became one of the most closely watched ecological experiments in modern conservation. In 1995, biologists released 14 wolves into Yellowstone, the first the park had seen in nearly 70 years. Researchers expected them to hunt elk. What followed surprised even the scientists running the project. With wolves back on the landscape, elk stopped grazing complacently in the open river valleys where they'd become easy, undisturbed browsers for decades. They moved more, stayed more alert, and spent less time stripping the willow and aspen along the riverbanks bare. Those trees started growing back. Beaver colonies, down to a single one in the entire park before the wolves returned, climbed to 9 within about 3 decades, because beavers need exactly the willow the elk had been eating. Some researchers argue the picture is more complicated than a single clean cause and effect, pointing to drought cycles and wildfire history as contributing factors alongside the wolves. But even accounting for that, most ecologists studying Yellowstone consider it one of the clearest documented examples anywhere in the world of a single predator reshaping an entire landscape, rivers included, just by changing how its prey behaved. On November 8, 2005, a 22-year-old geological engineering student named Kenton Carnegie went for a walk near a mining camp called Points North Landing in northern Saskatchewan. He'd been warned. A trucker at the camp had seen him passing around close-range photos of wolf pups and warned him how dangerous that kind of proximity actually was. A bush pilot warned him too about wolves that had already menaced other workers near the camp. Carnegie went anyway. He told a colleague he'd be back for dinner by 7. He never came back. Searchers found his body later that evening, surrounded by wolf tracks. The area around the camp had an unregulated garbage dump, and wolves had been feeding there for months, losing whatever natural wariness of humans they'd started with. The case became more complicated than it first appeared. One wildlife biologist who reviewed the evidence for the coroner's office argued it was more likely a black bear, based on how the body had been consumed and moved. But after 3 days of testimony in 2007, examining the track patterns left in the snow, a 6-person coroner's jury reached a different conclusion. The tracks were narrow-chested and centered on a single line of travel, consistent with wolves trotting, not the wider, more staggered pattern a bear leaves. The jury ruled it a wolf attack. It became the first officially confirmed case in modern North American history of healthy wild wolves killing a person. Even now, not everyone agrees. That disagreement among actual wildlife biologists looking at the same evidence tells you something. This isn't a simple, obvious category of danger. It's a rare event that even the experts have to work hard to interpret correctly. 5 years later, there was no ambiguity at all. On March 8, 2010, a 32-year-old special education teacher named Candice Berner went out for her regular evening jog on a road outside Chignik Lake, Alaska. She was found less than an hour after she'd left. State biologists moved quickly, tracking and killing 2 wolves in the surrounding area within days. Unlike the Carnegie case, there was no dispute over what had happened. It was the second confirmed case of a healthy wild wolf killing a person in North America, and it had taken only 5 years to follow the first. At Points North Landing, the thread was habituation. Wolves had been feeding on unsecured garbage for months before Carnegie died. Camp workers there had already survived 1 wolf attack the year before. A miner named Fred Desjardins jumped by a lone wolf outside a nearby mine, who wrestled the animal off himself before help arrived. After Carnegie's death, the landfill finally got fenced. In 2016, more than a decade later, a worker at a different mine in the same region was mauled by a lone wolf near another unsecured site. Same pattern, same region, over and over. A wolf that has learned humans mean food stops treating humans the way its ancestors did. Berner's case broke that explanation entirely. Alaska Fish and Game investigators searched specifically for a habituation link and found none. No history of the local wolves approaching people, no food source drawing them toward the village, no kill site they might have been guarding, no rabies in the animals recovered afterward. The official report called it an aggressive predatory attack, relatively short in duration, with no identifiable trigger at all. Two wolves, in good physical condition with large fat reserves, simply targeted a lone runner on an empty road at dusk. Whatever explained Points North Landing didn't apply here. Berner was 32, a special education teacher from Pennsylvania who'd moved to Alaska just months earlier to teach in Chignik Lake, a village of fewer than 100 people, reachable only by air. She was small, under 5 feet tall, but fit, a former gymnast and avid runner. On the afternoon of the attack, she finished her school day, faxed her timesheet, changed into running clothes, and jogged down the only road leading out of the village. A witness later found her tracks making an abrupt reversal partway along the route, as if she'd turned to face something behind her. She was found that evening a mile outside town, dragged off the road, her body surrounded by wolf tracks in the snow. DNA evidence eventually confirmed at least 2 wolves involved. She had simply been running, alone, at the wrong moment, on the only road available to her. That should, in theory, make the risk predictable and manageable. Avoid habituated wolves, secure your food and garbage, and the danger drops close to zero. Mostly that's true, but it isn't the whole picture, because a wolf pack hunting cooperatively doesn't need to be habituated to be dangerous. It only needs to be hungry and organized and willing to test something unfamiliar. Researchers studying wolfpack behavior describe a hunting strategy built around probing. A pack doesn't commit to an attack immediately. It approaches, watches, sometimes retreats, testing whether a potential target is capable of defending itself before committing to a real attack. Wildlife biologists have documented this same probing behavior directed at moose, at bison, even at other wolf packs contesting territory, a cautious, almost exploratory phase before any real commitment. That testing phase is part of why wolf encounters with humans so rarely escalate. Most of the time, the pack decides a person isn't worth the risk and moves on. Field reports from wolf-heavy regions of Alaska and Western Canada describe far more sightings and near encounters. Wolves observed at close range, wolves following a hiker for a stretch before losing interest, than anything resembling an actual attack. The cases where that calculation goes the other way are rare, specifically because the test usually fails in the human's favor. Usually. What nobody has fully explained is why that calculation occasionally flips, and what separates the tens of thousands of quiet encounters between wolves and people across North America every year from the handful that end the way Carnegie's and Berner's did. Some researchers point to habituation, some to unusual desperation during a hard winter, some to the specific vulnerability of someone moving alone, at a jogger's pace, on a quiet road at dusk. None of those explanations fully accounts for every case on record. The honest answer is that wildlife biologists are still working with a very small number of confirmed incidents, and a small number is a hard foundation to build a complete theory on. What is measurable is the broader trend in encounters, even the ones that don't end fatally. As wolf populations expand back into places they haven't occupied in decades, wildlife agencies across the western United States have documented a steady rise in wolves showing up near towns, ranches, and hiking trails. Animals with no history of avoiding people simply because their parents never had reason to either. A wolf, raised in a landscape with regular, low-stakes human contact, learns a different baseline than a wolf raised in true wilderness. Multiply that across an expanding population, and the range of possible outcomes gets wider, not narrower. None of this makes the wolf a reckless killer. The numbers still say otherwise. 2 confirmed fatal attacks by healthy wild wolves in North America across the entire 21st century so far is an extraordinarily small number next to the tens of thousands of wolves currently living across the continent. But the number that mattered for 100 years was 0. And the sentence built on that 0, the one repeated in extension bulletins and park literature, is no longer accurate. It hasn't been since 2005. The comparison people usually reach for here is the black bear, an animal with a genuinely higher, more consistent record of predatory attacks on humans across North America. That comparison is fair on the numbers, But it misses what actually makes the wolf case worth paying attention to. A black bear that decides to hunt a person acts alone, on its own judgment, in a single moment. A wolf pack that crosses that same line does it with 6 or 8 animals coordinating, each one contributing a fraction of a decision that, added together, becomes the kind of sustained, organized pursuit that produced Carnegie's and Berner's deaths. It isn't that wolves attack more often. It's that when the rare attack happens, it comes from an animal built, quite literally, to outthink and out-coordinate whatever it's decided to pursue. There's also a slower-moving variable behind all of this that most people never think about, and it isn't really about the wolves at all. It's about how quickly and how completely humans expect to reclaim comfort with an animal we spent a century actively eliminating. Wolf recovery programs are, by design, betting that decades of near-total absence can be undone within a single human generation, that ranchers, hikers, joggers, and small towns can recalibrate their sense of what's safe just as fast as the wolf population itself recovers. The ecological case for that bet is strong. Yellowstone's rivers are the proof. The social and behavioral case, the part that determines whether the next encounter goes the way most of them do, quietly, without incident, or the way Chignik Lake did, is still being written in real time, one recovering population and one expanding range at a time. The gap between those two facts, small numbers and a broken absolute, is where the real danger of a wolf actually lives, not in the animal being especially bloodthirsty. In the fact that an entire century of reassurance rested on a number that, once it changed the story permanently. There is no way to walk that sentence back to zero. There is only the current number, expanding populations, and packs testing new territory that hasn't had wolves in it for 100 years, learning, the same way every wolf pack always has, exactly what they can get away with.